Thank you so much for being here for this session, the Future Boardroom, How to Transform in Turbulent Times. Very, very relevant in the context that we are in. So we have here together today with us Monica Lagercrantz. Thank you for being here. Helle Bank Jørgensen and Håkan Broman. Thank you so much. And we have Liselott Engstam, the chair from Boards Impact Forum, and myself. I'm the operations director at Boards Impact Forum. Before we get started, maybe if you want to change slide, Liselott. I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of how we are going to run this session. So we start with this very, very small introduction. Then we are going to go to a presentation on the Future Boardroom with Helle Bank Jørgensen. And then we have a panel discussion together also with Monica Lagercrantz and Håkan Broman. And based on these discussions, we have a poll, we have a couple of reflection questions, and then we go into breakout rooms where we can discuss them together. After that, we come back and we share in plenary between everyone. And then we have a very small wrap up, and we let you know about all the exciting things that we are planning at Boards Impact Forum for the next fall. If you can change the slide, I would ask you a couple of things before we get started. Please mute yourselves. If there are any AI recorders or participants that are not identified, we will have to remove you. So we would really ask you to kindly identify yourselves. So if you don't have your name, sometimes someone joins, it's just a iPhone 4 or so please write your name on it. You can do that yourselves because it will be really relevant when we're making the breakout rooms. The chat box is open, so please feel free to go in, introduce yourself, post comments, links, thoughts, reflections. We can really use the chat to have a bit of a sharing extra content between ourselves in the community. And we are going to record this first part of the webinar, and then we cut out the breakout rooms and when we share, and then we just put that little wrap up in the end also. So if you have any technical difficulties, just email us, reach out to us. Before we get started, I would also like to tell you a little bit more about Boards Impact Forum. We are very, very proud of the work we have done this far. For those of you who have not joined us before, so we are the Nordic chapter from the Climate Governance Initiative in collaboration with the World Economic Forum. And we work with board directors and board networks in their Nordic countries. So we are talking about Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, and Iceland. We are very proud of the work we have been doing this far, but we're very ambitious. We want to do more. So feel free to join us. We want to do more. If you have any ideas, thoughts, reflections, join us. Try to come and collaborate with us. We really like to collaborate. So part of our structure is to have this collaboration with the existing board networks that we already have in the Nordics. And we have also a lot of collaborations with other chapters in other locations. So please join us. And we are also planning some really exciting things for the fall and next year, where we will definitely require some extra hands. So please get in contact with us if you want to get involved. If you can change the next slide. For this session today, we are going to be focusing on the first three principles from the World Economic Forum. So there's a charter with 8 principles, and these 8 principles are the principles that guide the work that we do at Boards Impact Forum. It varies from the board's role, risk opportunities, strategic impact, objectives, reporting, incentives, stakeholder exchanges. Please go ahead and check the principles. They're really, really useful. For this session today, we are really focusing on the board's role. What is relevant in terms of subject accountability, subject command, and the board structure themselves also. And this is something that we really like to point out, that here within the 8 principles, it's interesting that we start from the boards at looking inwards. What do we as boards, that we as board directors can do when it comes to this subject. So this is the focus for today's session. And I would like to bring Helle Bank Jørgensen. Maybe Liselott, would you like to introduce Helle?
Yes, of course. Thank you. Warm welcome, everybody. We are delighted to have Helle joining us. And for those who know Helle, she is from Denmark. She's worked globally for a lot of years. And she has lived in Canada, and she's now moving back. We're glad she's moving back to us in Europe. She has very practical knowledge around different topics around sustainability, and she has brought up an entire advisory firm and training firm around the topic of training for boards. And she's been recognized alongside with that. She interacts both with boards, but also with governments, officials. I know she's going, and right now she's, of course, at the Climate Week in London. She now is one of the top leaders of Board Intelligence, which some of you might know. It's a board portal, but also now advisory firm. And she has just written a book that we highly recommend, The Future Boardroom: How to Transform in Turbulent Times. And we asked Helle to come in and share some of the insights she found writing this book and interviewing these people. So warm welcome, Helle. We start with your presentation and then we will bring in the panel. Warm welcome, Helle.
Thank you so much. And yes, I am right now in London. It's a little bit earlier than it is for you in Sweden or other places, but it's absolutely fantastic to be here. And thank you, Liselott, and for all you're doing in this field. And yes, I did. If you can see the book here, right, The Future Boardroom: How to Transform in Turbulent Times. This is actually my second book. The first book, Stewards of the Future, is very much trying to see what's the insight, what's the foresight we need to have in boardrooms. How do we see around corners and get prepared? And then I was asked, could you write one more about, the boardroom and how do we transform in the boardroom? Because if we look at everything that's coming at us at the moment, think AI, think cyber, think geopolitics, think what can we say, what can we not say? Let me just say ESG, environment, social governance. When I'm in Washington, D.C., where I was a few weeks ago, talking to Congress members, I do not use those words. Here, I was speaking at the Houghton Summit Monday, and the first thing I was asked is like something in relation to, do board of directors know the impact of ESG on their insurance? And I had to start by saying, well, are we talking about environment, social governance, or evil socialist governments? That is kind of like what some in the US will say. But yes, so in terms of the Future Boardroom, I interviewed a lot of leaders around the world, Michael Tresco, some of you from Sweden might know Mervyn King, South Africa, Paul Pullman, many will know Katie Taylor, Claudia Sender, Dominique Barton, a lot of leaders that I've had the pleasure of working with, but I also believe have that insight and foresight, and wanted to share some of that. So as you say, the themes we are discussing here goes from everything from decarbonization to just transition here in London. There are not that many board members here, but I was at the ringing the bell or pressing the button together with Chapter Zero here the other day, and I think it's important to say that many of those discussions are not only policy conversations; they are actually boardroom responsibilities, and that's also what I say when you know that Howden, which is insurance. Have you ever recently read your D&O insurance policy? What is it actually that say? What can be insured in the future? What cannot be insured? And that, I think, is what I'd like to just brief a little bit about today. Not what boards are doing, but what they must prepare for. What I believe we will see and what will define those boardrooms that thrive versus those that falter. So, and Liselott, I need you to perhaps go to the next slide. And by the way, these very fancy slides, I'm kind of like my good team that put them together. And I was thinking, yes, it's kind of like this very turbulent world where you're not really sure where we're going or not. I believe we're entering an age where governance itself will be tested, and not just by the markets, but by nature, by technology, by society. And there's a few things that I see ahead of us. Climate justice, accountability claims will increase. I know that's not in terms of, I don't think it's way too early to have someone from US with us here, but we are seeing it at the moment. And boards will face not only the reputational risk, but also legal and the moral ones. I think we often think about what is it right now instead of looking to say in X number of years, 5, 10 years, what are people looking back and telling the board of directors? You ought to have known this. You ought to have had the information about taking informed decisions. Were you informed enough to do that? So, and that's one of the things I keep saying, you know, it's hard to make informed decisions if you're not informed. So board directors of today need to get all of this insight that's coming at us 24/7, not in order to be experts, but in order to ask the questions. I think AI will reshape decision-making, and boards will be judged on how they govern what they don't yet fully understand. So again, we need to make sure that we ask the questions. We need to make sure we get to that understanding. We need to ensure we have the guardrails. Stakeholder capitalism, I think, will be challenged, especially as geopolitical fragmentation deepens. Let's see what comes out of all the discussions that was just here in Europe. I guess the last couple of days in terms of wars or no wars, things we haven't thought about as part of the board agenda, but will have really an impact on the companies. And I think board will have to defend their values, not just their earnings. The future will not be defined by how fast we grow, but how responsibly we actually adapt. So what will define the boardroom of the future? And Liselott might go to the next slide. I think we have had a lot of people that have been reacting instead of responding. And it's not more the reports that we are doing. It's not better metrics. It's the governance that understands the systems it sits within. And I believe that there's three things, well, there are more, but key ways in terms of the boardrooms must evolve. And you have here from oversight to inside. I think boards must move from watching to actually understanding. And that means scenario planning, not just for earnings, but for ecosystem collapse, for digital warfare, demographic shifts, all of those things that's coming at us. I think we really need to have this, thinking the unthinkable, as the good Nick Goings, who's also part of our development program, says. We need to learn to think the unthinkable and have the scenarios so we at least not reacting, but we have an idea of where we're going. I also think this is a question. I'm going from composition of the board to conscious. We talk a lot about diversity, and we should, but the next leap is, in my mind, culture. Boards must foster psychological safety so that dissent in the boardroom isn't punished, but it's prized. We want people to have curiosity. We want to have foresight. We want all of these things that really bring the best out of the boardroom. And that's where I often say we're talking about having discussion about what is the purpose of the company, but what is the purpose of the board? Have we had that discussion? And that's where we go from policies to principles. Regulation will never be fast enough. Some would argue that what I've been lately in terms of reporting on CSRD is too fast. But I think what boards must do is lead with internal clarity. And one of the things that I often ask is what's your red line? What will you never, ever trade off? And I can tell you that if you don't know that, the stakeholders will define it for you. And we've seen some examples where companies had, perhaps more for marketing reasons, gone one direction. Suddenly there was a shift in the market, and the company then went to the other direction, alienated the first community that they had communicated to. And this shifting, that's not the role of the board. We as board members need to have defined, what are the values? Where is the red lines? What is it we will not compromise on? And perhaps in terms of the next slide, if you go to the next slide, there are a few voices. I think I've asked over 100 leaders across the world, not what they're doing, but what they see coming. And a few of them, as you see here, will need to show value beyond profits, not just in a purpose statement, but in supply chains, algorithm, in our audits. In the future, board meetings will have a chief risk imagination officer, not just internal audit. I think that's another part of this, is like, what will that future boardroom look like? Who should be around that future boardroom table? The greatest risk is not climate or AI, it's complacency. And the last one here, and it's actually from Martin Wolf from Financial Times, that directors are political actors and shouldn't deny it. And then Martin Wolf goes out to say, and some of us are more important than others, being board members. So I think it's important that we really have a discussion about what is our role as board members. Is it just to keep the company alive, or is it to have a better company after your term? Especially in a world where we see that the turnaround of CEOs are faster and faster. It's the board that have the opportunity, and I would say the responsibility, to really define what does good look like? What is it we are doing? And is that to just sort of have the same company after X number of years, or is it to leave the company a better place than you found it? And not only the company, but also the society around. I think there are a few things that we must prepare for. And so if you go to the next slide, please, Lotte. Thank you. I think we need to prepare for climate liability, nature risk becoming direct board accountability. We need to prepare for AI governance and ethics as a standing agenda item, not delegated to IT or someone else. I think we need to have a talent expectation, especially from younger generations, who do not say, oh, ESG or sustainability is over there. It is part of the business. It needs to be embedded into everything that we do. Political polarization, we are living with it. And there are people that says, oh, well, it will be stable. I think we need to realize that we are living in a world that is turbulent. And I think we need to understand that staying silent is no longer neutral. We need to make sure we build resilience, not just in the financial models, but also in the mental models. And that's where really getting that insight, getting the foresight, having the global network helps build that muscle. All of this requires more than skills. They require this new mindset that I'm writing about in the Future Boardroom. I think the board of the future is not kind of like a club. It's kind of like really understanding we are here. We have a purpose. This is a job. You'll see in the book that I say you do not sit on a board, you serve. And I think it's important that we as directors understand what is really the responsibility, not just from a fiduciary point of view, but what is the expectations from everyone that are looking at us and saying, was that the decision that was the best decision, not only for the company, but also for the stakeholders, the society that you touch. Tata had the pleasure also working with the Tata board, and as Tata is saying, we're not part of society, we are society. So that mind shift, kind of like what is really our role, and that's perhaps where I want to close, and we can go to the next. So what is our role? What's our responsibility? What do I ask of you as board members, governance professionals? I think it's a question about leading, not with certainty, I know how this is, but with humility and with foresight and with asking the questions, and to serve not just the companies, but the communities, the environment, and enable the company to exist. Again, I'm here in London at the moment. I'm talking a lot in terms of both nature, but also insurance. And I think there's a belief that there will always be someone who can bail us out. And that's just not going to happen, especially Mother Nature seems to not understand when we say, well, there's no climate issues, etc. So we need to understand that. We need to prepare. Are we prepared for the world that is coming, or only for the quarter that is ending? So with that, I think we have the panel, but I hope that you will take a little bit of time and read the Future Boardroom, how to transform in turbulent times. And there's a lot of amazing people that I'm very proud that have given it fantastic praises. So thanks, Liselotte.
Thank you so much, Helle, for sharing. And as we can see, there's a lot of things moving at the same time, which is, of course, why several of us will not just serve on boards and not just sit on boards and not just try to guide the companies, but we'll also have to try to rethink what's the role of the board. To help us with that, we have two more amazing panelists. So we have Håkan Broman, welcome.
Thank you.
And Håkan is currently the CEO of the Swedish Academy of Board Directors. He's the former vice chair of the Swedish Corporate Governance Code that defines the code for the Swedish boards. But not the least, he is a NED, as the rest of us, on FM Mattsson, Comfortgruppen, Nordic Guarantee Insurance, and Terranor. And I know he's highly sought after, and he has a background as both CEO and general counsel at companies like NCC, ABB, Daimler-Benz, etc. Monica is another really experienced board member, board advisor. She's also the founder of BoardClick, which is helping boards evaluate themselves to become more proficient in where they need to go and what actions they need to take. And she works with advisory across Europe and Asia in these topics, and has also a strong background from board recruitment and is very experienced in the competence and composition areas. So warm welcome to all of you. I'm delighted to have you. Okay, and I wanted to start with asking Håkan and Monica to just think about and share with us, what do you see as the major shifts coming on now that wasn't really there the last kind of 10 years, but is now coming on, and what impact do you see that has on boards? Håkan, do you want to start?
Sure, I can do that. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see so many from so various parts of the world. That's always inspiring, I think. Since I have an international background myself, I've actually worked in most parts of the world and being on boards as part of that job. What I see in terms of we have tend in the past or the last couple of years tend to forgot what the main objective of the board might be. I think we need to go back to the roots and actually define that. And for me, and that this is not some kind of truth or nothing, just want to say that the root cause of having a board is actually to create value. It's a value formation that has to take place in that. And what do I mean by value? Well, value depends on what the company or organization actually needs. What is the target? So we see in research that boards that actually adapt to the purpose or the vision or mission of the company creates value. If you have a board composition that doesn't do that, then you have to shift, obviously, the board members. So that's one of the things that I think we need to bring with us and never lose track of. Always keep that in mind. And if that is in place and we have defined what the task is, then we have as a board the job to make sound decisions at all times that actually aligns with the purpose of the company. If we don't do that, we don't do our job. So those are two of the main sort of tracks that I try to keep in any board that I lead or participate in. Now we're off track or we're on track. That's one way of doing it. Maybe old-fashioned for some, but then again, I am old-fashioned, so it helps me. And I cannot keep track of all those influences that come all the time. I have to be true to what I actually have learned and what I know works. And from there, take the next step, but do that together with inspiring and people that actually has other virtues than I have.
Right. Thank you, Håkan. Monica, what do you see? What are the major shifts that will already or will impact boards going forward?
Good morning, everyone, from a very sunny Stockholm. So it's interesting because we are discussing major shifts and we are discussing the future, etc. But the interesting thing with boards, I think, is that we are seeing the same challenges as we have seen before. Maybe they come in new colors and forms and so on. But what I'm thinking, I've been thinking about for a long time is, after having been part of maybe 500 plus board evaluations during the last years, at least seen the results and so on, the role of the board has always been a challenge. And I wouldn't say maybe the formal role of the board, being a lawyer, and it's pretty clear. But the thing is that what is often missed in the boardroom is taking time to discuss and align on the purpose of the board. I would call it the role of the board, very similar. And that comes out again and again in every board evaluation. Doesn't matter the ownership type, size of company, geography, what have you. So, and I think the challenge has been that for a long time, you could go on even knowing we should spend time on this because, we have other priorities. But because of the shift we are in now, it's unavoidable that you take time. But then we are, as I see it, going into another challenge. It's the lack of time you have in the boardroom. So those two priorities are contradicting. And that leads me to think that we need to focus on the board work, board processes. How do we actually work in the boardroom? And it's amazing that it's pretty similar, even if the challenges are being redefined or reappearing or new challenges or other. We are still working pretty much in the same way, same number. I mean, the amount of work is getting tougher, but the hours we spend and should be spending and all that. So I think it's a question of how should the board be setting the processes and the board work in the future, and set time aside efficiently to define the purpose of the board. I think that's what I'm seeing, and that needs to be done, having been in the tech world for this last 8 years, which is totally different. You see, there are other processes. You can work in other ways. You can work in sprints. You need to have a high speed. You can't wait. And if some board directors think it's going too fast, then the composition is not the right one. That leads me going into the composition. And I think that's the second field. The board composition is always crucial, but we need to look for, we shouldn't change composition completely, of course. We need to have continuity in the boardroom, but we should be open for a new type of board directors. And I think the mix, the diversity of minds, that's really important. And in the composition, I'm thinking, of course, we have some hard core competencies that come in now, but even more important is to look for other soft skills, other kind of personal competencies like, courage, curiosity, being agile, thinking outside the box. The problem being, having recruited many board members, is of course you look for certain competencies, you recruit the board members, but once you're in a group of people, it's the same for all of us. It's hard to leverage all your competencies and also all your ambition, because you have other people in the room and you have a chair that needs to orchestrate the board.
Indeed.
So that's what I'm seeing: composition and defining the role of the board, fast, efficiency.
Yeah. Fast is the word. So I wanted to actually, before we go on, to actually pick on some of your knowledge, Håkan, around the corporate governance codes. Since they are very impactful, especially in Europe. I wanted to ask you, and we also have a bit of a different corporate governance code here in the Nordic and our way of operating. Can you share something around what do we have, what you see good in that, and what do you see is evolving in the corporate governance codes, and that will also impact boards, before we go on?
Yes, we have. We have one of the thinnest. It's actually 24 pages in this format. I don't know if you can see it. It's very, very small, small sized. Oh, well, okay. 24 pages only. It deals with regulatory issues that is not covered by law, or it expands on that only. And that has to do with the fact that the governance ecosystem in this part of the world, especially Sweden and throughout the Nordics, I like to think, is pretty much the same. And we have an ecosystem whereby equity is drawn to listed companies, and therefore we have to also have a governance model that suits that climate. And we've been able to do that. I think most of you can actually name a few of the larger companies that actually are Swedish from the beginning. And this has to do with the fact that there is a high belief between Swedish private individuals and investing in enterprises. We have some 3 million private individuals like myself that actually own shares in this company. That equals the number that actually own shares in the UK. And there are quite a lot more people living in the UK. The governance code in Sweden has to complement law and make it easier, more foreseeable, more relevant. And it also writes the code in a way that it doesn't add a lot of fluffy, code of conduct and all that. It's usually very flower language that it is introduced. This is the other way around. This is sharp, and as is actually written for the layman, so that a lot of people that work and that should work on boards, they don't have this kind of background, but they can contribute. And they have to understand the environment whereby they're supposed to work. The code is written in that format so they can easily pick up on the main principles of what constitutes sound corporate governance in this part of the world. And the code has been in place in 2005. I've been part of rewriting a couple of editions of it, and it works. Not to perfection, nothing does, but it works very well. It actually has picked up by the Swedish government. So now in all the state-owned companies, they have the same policy for those. So there is no boundary between state-owned or privately owned enterprises, which I think is quite fascinating.
It is fascinating, actually, in 2 dimensions. One of them is that, including myself and a lot of other people I know that sits on boards in the Nordic, we actually bring a lot of the approach and tone into international board positions. So one of the things we will do, as most of you know, we will, besides the recording of this, we'll also create a blog post, and we'll make sure that we actually add the Swedish Corporate Governance Code in there, because it's actually really useful for a lot of people. So I wanted to go to turn it around and ask all three of you, what things are boards doing that you actually think is outdated? We can leave that aside. We don't need to do as much of that, so we can concentrate on certain things. What is it that we can try to put aside? Do you want to start on this, Monica? And we can't hear you now because you're on mute.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Putting aside is one thing, improve is another thing.
Okay.
Or
That
putting
would be,
yeah. So in order to work, I think efficiency is the key word, because we are lacking time in the boardroom. So finding ways to it's a classical thing, not spending time on information you should already have or know. And it's incredibly odd how hard that is. And we all know it. It is mentioned in every board meeting. We shouldn't do this. We will please present, blah, blah, blah. And still we sit and listen to the same thing. So I think it's the chair's role to lead. So put aside, I think we should put aside the aspects of the chair role that are, that are there and could be improved, because that will affect everything, actually everything. That's one thing. I also think that these used to be one strategy session a year, pretty outdated. You can't work like that. The world is changing so fast. So you need to find other ways of dealing with strategy, and strategy is not like a separate thing anyway. It's in everything we do in the boardroom. It's actually the responsibility of the board. So finding a much more embedded way of working with all the matters that are on the table. And the third thing, of course, doing like a board evaluation every second year, what have you. It's not possible. You need to work with feedback loops, not only in the boardroom, but everyone should do that. But specifically now we are discussing the boardroom. So finding the best feedback loops. And I think, of course, board evaluation is a great tool. You should find a tool that fits your board and your where you are and what kind of company you are. And you should do that regularly. A major one once in a while, and then faster one, like follow up evaluation.
Right.
It's
yeah.
So
thank you so much. I think you're on to one point around strategy, that if I look at most boards right now, it's a lot of firefighting going on. And actually, it's really hard to think and predict outside going forward, which actually means that a lot of boards becomes more and more short-sighted. So Helle, what have you seen that helps boards actually keeping focus on the real key things?
Well, in addition to what Monica was saying, I think there's a lot of things we can do much better. Everything from the agenda, put it upside down where we actually start talking about what's relevant. Sorry, I know compliance is relevant too, but we are spending way too much time on that and not so much time on what is it really that we should not react to. What should we respond to? I think we need to get out of the boardroom, boots on the ground, really having an idea of what is happening both in society, subsidiaries, etc. I think we should invite younger people into the boardroom, not necessarily as board members, but say, how does innovation happen in this company? Where does it happen? Can we see some of those younger people? Can they come and present to the board? Get a feeling for what is really happening. We have to be careful that we are not, there's some that says, well, we need to have board members more often because all of these things that are happening right now. We have to be careful that we're not starting to do management's job. right? So that's very, very fine line. But help management,
Right.
when should we press the speeder? When should we press the brake? Ask the questions that, you know, management that is deep into everything might not be on that level. But in order to do that, you need as a board member to have that broader view. You need to be able to ask the questions of the material. And yes, having, as you're saying, Monica, the board evaluations, but also having communication within the boardroom. Often it's interesting also when I do board assessments, it's, you know, people have so much insight, have so much knowledge, but it's not being heard when you sit around the boardroom table. And that's just a waste of time and frankly also of the money that we are paid, right? So I think we opt for really looking at how can we as board members really serve the company and the society. And that's a, you know, mind shift for some.
So we're coming back to the value creation topic that you started with, Håkan, but I'll do one more deep dive for you as well, Håkan. What is it that we can improve in terms of actually operating? And I would say that one of the ways that we have invented over the last years is to have committees. So now it's actually in most countries legally obliged to have both risk and audit committees, to have remuneration committees, to have nomination committees. So now we started to operate a bit more flexible. Are there any other things we should think about around our operations that we could get rid of so we can become more value creating?
Well, yeah, sure. And we have to remember the human aspect of a board composition of any team composition. We like to get the most out of people. And how can we do that? And most people are actually prone to risk awareness. That's shown by my research. We like to be comforted. We can actually do best when we are comforted, when we are in an environment and we feel comfortable. So actually start meetings. I always do that when I lead, to make sure that people actually bring their pulse down a bit. So they actually feel comforted. They are listened to. We start with some kind of evaluation of what goes on in the world. They can speak a bit about it. That only takes 30 minutes, but everyone is then brought on into the meeting. And then we can move on to the tasks, because we have to understand that also with decision making, that also shown by research, we are very, very prone to emotions. We make decisions based on emotions, not on rationale. You can ask yourself what kind of decisions you made, and I usually take two examples. If you're married and if you have children, were those rational decisions? Pretty important decisions, wouldn't you say? Purely based on emotion. And that's the way we are. And we can also see if we have someone usually a shared person that is very sort of dominant and drives the board meetings in a way you don't get the best out of the group or the team or the board. And so just make sure that emotions do not drive the decisions, rather data do. But triple D organization, data-driven decision, are the ones that actually can expand and grow as a company. So that's one aspect. Make sure that we always think about the human aspects, and we like to think that we can solve problems that we see by adding things. Maybe we should do it the other way around. We should reduce the agenda. Focus on one topic. If purchasing of this company is very, very important, we usually like to talk about sales. The easiest way to actually improve profit is to reduce cost. If we then focus on purchasing for this entire, then make sure that you don't add other topics for that. And make sure that it's very well prepared and everyone has a task in actually contributing to that discussion. then you can actually have a decision by the end of the day or the second day or the third day that brings value to the company. So it has to be sort of, we are not that prone anymore to deep dives as we should be, because we don't dive into the facts, we take them for granted, and then we add an event more. And I don't think we should be going that path. Bringing on competences that we don't have, don't possess ourselves, it's very valuable. But who likes to think they don't have that competence when you're appointed a board member? You're supposed to have that. And being honest about that, and actually saying that I don't know much about auditing, so let's bring in the experts, and we have competence within the board, let them speak. That's one way of actually making sure that everyone is involved. Because there is one way of putting this, Liselott, and is to say that I'd like to harvest the wisdom of the crowd in every possible way that I can in that meeting, and we should. As a board member, and if also, as Helle says, if you're also paid some money for that, you have your fee, then you're supposed to actually bring money value. Wisdom of the crowd is some kind of leading, labeling the way of working, I think.
Right. So I think it's really actually to also use the entire board to help prioritize. So one of the things in one of my audit committees, we actually have moved, so now we have non-exec times in the beginning of the meeting as well, to actually just go through what things have we already reviewed in the paper. We don't need to go through it. Toof, take it away. We don't need to have it on the agenda, but here we need to spend more time. The thing is that if you don't do that, you're already in a role of presentations. So I do agree on bringing in the wisdom of the crowd to actually also help prioritize. Let's see what our participants here think. So we have 3 questions for you that we'd like for you to answer. The first one is, do you feel that your board has the competence, process, and structure to sufficiently guide and supervise the transformation that you are now going through in these turbulent times? The second question is, do you feel you get sufficiently trained to lead in all of these new impacting areas like AI? And the third question is, do you feel that you have the processes and structure to act with sufficient speed? So we'd like for you to answer these 3 questions and bring on a bit more flavor of what we know in the wisdom of the crowd of this webinar participants. What is the perspectives? It's also going to form a backdrop for the discussions we are going to have. So I will end the poll in 5 seconds. So hurry to push the buttons. Okay. So I'm ending the poll. And I'm sharing the results. Can you see the results? Right. So let's take one question each. Monica, do you want to start with the first question? Our board has the competence to actually manage this. And we can see that we have 40% agree, 55% are neutral or disagree.
Sorry, Lisa, what would you like me to do?
Just to comment, what's your perspective on this? Yeah.
Okay. Just need a neutral agree. Yeah.
And just the first question.
Yes. It's interesting because I was just studying some data from Boardclick, and it's very similar to these responses, even if we are quite a small group. And yes, so, I mean, it's pretty evenly spread in a way.
Yeah, which is also interesting, right?
Also interesting. I think That's what I notice the most. And interesting is also, you know, how you assess competencies, because you also need to like align yourself what competencies should we be having.
Yeah.
And it's these days specifically important to look into the future. I call it fit to strategy. So it's now you look at the competencies, but what about the future? So I don't know if the response is.
Well, let's go to question number 2. Helle, do you want to comment on this one? Do you get sufficient training in the boards? Here's a surprising answer.
Well, I love to comment on this one.
Yeah.
So, with competent boards having trained in 58 countries, and I can see 58% disagree. I think we are up for an era where we need, as board members, to ask for training or upskilling or whatever we want to call it. Talking actually to the insurance companies at the moment in terms of the D&O insurance, and saying, you know, if I want to have a D&O insurance, I can come and say I met someone on the golf course. Sorry. If I was a state authorized public accountant, I have to sign off that it gives a true and fair view on the financials and other things. In order to have an insurance, I need to get, you know, trained every single year. So, but we have this idea that, well, you're such an accomplished director or, you know, executive, and now you know everything. But with everything that's coming at us, we need to keep up to date. So I love all of you also who say, you know, disagree, because it's probably also because you're curious. That's also why you're here, right? So we need that curiosity. We need that keep ourselves up to date. And it's not easy, especially in the time we're living in. So hence also why, you know, we have the global forum, we hear, right, that, and we Board Intelligence now, you know, offer that kind of like, how can we get the designation, the certification to also show that we have that. And I think we are seeing that companies want to see it not only in the governance documents, insurance want to see it, but investors also want to see who's actually around the table to make those most important decisions. So I love to talk to the one that says fully agree. Pia, is that you?
So we'll go into the last. I've saved the toughest question to the end, Håkan, and to you, of course. So our board has the processes structured to act with sufficient speed. What do you think of this one?
Thank you. I think that's a typical answer. We feel that we don't cope. I like and I think that this is often a feeling I get as well. I cannot prepare the way I should do. I don't have the knowledge. How should I actually deal with this? And I like to think back to what I said earlier. The answer. We shouldn't look for the solution unless we actually know what the topic and the goal is.
Right.
And then we can actually see whether or not we have the processes and structure to act with sufficient speed. Are we on the board of a company that has a track record of growing with profit for the last 5, 6, 7 years? Then we might actually be doing something good. And don't get fooled by emotion. Look at the data at all times. Look at the data. How are we performing? To comfort yourself, and if there's a turnaround needed, there is no turnaround happening, then obviously we don't have the processes and structures to act sufficient speed. So the data don't lie.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, in my boards, we have temporary committees in all of them for different topics.
Yeah.
Which is a way to actually make sure that you take charge of a topic quick enough. So now it's time for us to have a bit of a discussion. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. Do agree a chair to lead the discussion, a vice chair to report back. Make short introductions so you actually know who you're talking to. The questions we want you to ask is, what one shift do you believe boards needs to make to be more future ready? And what is standing in the way? If you can find, select also a share and a discussion so that you can have a thorough discussion. I'm just now going to move people a bit more together so that we can find due to lack of competence on this chair of sharing this meeting, we are running out of time. So what I suggest is we have one more group to present, but Fernanda, if you could just take the final conclusion here, and then we'll go back to the last group, and people can stay who can stay.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really important moment because we're very, very excited to let you know that we have our AI training open. Now we have the dates and the speakers, and I can share the link here in the chat. And we have an early bird until the 17th of August, so please go and check it out. So the first session is there on the 4th of September. We also have our sustainability program that is open. So the two interesting things is that the AI program, it's based on this research that we have now been updating, so it's going to be super, super fresh. And the sustainability program, we just recently, a few months back, got it certified by the Climate Governance Initiative. There's also some open webinars from CGI if you're really interested now during the holiday season. So if you're really interested to keep this feeling of learning, that would be really, really great. And very quickly, this is what I wanted to say, and to thank the speakers for this session, to thank our partners that make this possible.